So I have a whole bunch of things in mind to talk about, and we'll just see where the Dharma takes us. The topic for the first 10 days of the 100 Days of Care is determination, resolve. So that's the thrust of the talk tonight, but I want to give sort of a broader taste of the context for our practice, why we would practice, and then how to practice. I'm not sure if I brought it up during either of the intro sessions. I think maybe in the one, um, the inside cover of the book has a quote from Clark Reed, who was a transactional analyst, a therapist in a particular tradition called transactional therapy or transactional analysis. And I was a part of a group with him for a few years. And he said this all the time. It's time to put a new show on the road. And I'm teaching Wednesday mornings now at Niagara College. I teach in the acting department. I teach yoga for actors. And so it's lined up with this fall. And so I'm like, I'm going to teach the 100 Days of Care without telling them that's what I'm teaching. And it's perfect because doesn't it fit? It's time to put a new show on the road, right? It's really easy to explain to a group of actors. Yeah. And what I'm telling them is, you already play a character. You're already playing a role. You play the role of me, right? Me, myself, and I. And we all have a name and we have personality. We have our quirks. We have our habits and patterns. And we identify strongly with our character. Yeah, we identify even rigidly with the character that we play. That's me, you know? So this idea, it's time to put a new show on the road. It's like, how is that identification with yourself? How is your character making out? Yeah, have you got a good show going? Are you happy? Are you peaceful most of the time? Or is it a little bumpy? So there's kind of two things that we can play with in our practice. And one is to, put a new show on the road, like develop a new identity, one that's better, self-improved, yeah, kinder, faster, smarter. And we can recognize that we're completely free of having to play a character or having to play a fixed character. And so there's this liberation involved. We can liberate ourselves from our small sense of self, from our identification, so that we are fluid, open, dynamic, responsive. So this enlightenment or liberation, nirvana or nibbana, is a stepping out of that ego self, that small self. And we can kind of do these two things together, meaning we can improve the conventional experience of being in a body, living a human life. We can improve that. We should improve that. We want to be comfortable. We want to be happy. But also this kind of deeper, profounder experience of kind of our ultimate nature, which is lacking that constriction. Well, we get a taste of it in meditation, maybe. Depends on how your meditation went, I guess, tonight. So we do a little breathing to settle and gather the mind. And then that kind of open awareness, aware of, I'm calling it a field, like that sense of, you're aware not just of the body, but you're aware of the sound of the fountain and are those frogs or cicadas? They're frogs, the sounds of the wildlife around us. That also is within your awareness. You know, when the eyes are open now, we're sitting here, nothing has changed. Our eyes have just opened and you're paying attention to me talk, but your awareness, you're aware of the hardness of the floor. You're aware of the walls in the room. You know, they're within your conscious awareness. They're not somehow separate from you. So what the kind of root confusion we have is that we draw ourselves or contract ourselves into, I'm somewhere in this, I'm inside, I'm behind my eyes, I'm in my amygdala or some part of the brain, you know. We conceive of ourselves as a small constricted thing, and then we behave as if we're here and everything else is out there, unrelated. I just don't have to look. If I close my eyes, it disappears. Yeah. But it's all of it. You know, when you think of your character, me, you can stand outside that and observe yourself. That right there is an indication that that's not you. If you're aware of yourself, you know, what is it that is aware of me, I, you? Yeah. You know, all of our struggle, all of our suffering comes from this confusion, the confusion that traps us and constricts us into a small self and puts everything else external, right? Everything's happening in relation. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Is it working for me or not? You know, so this is the root confusion, is this constriction and this identification. And from it comes all of the other ones out of two main branches. So we conceive or experience a separate self. I heard a really nice word used to describe this recently that I hadn't heard before. So the isolated self. We isolate ourselves. It's like we cut ourselves out from the rest of reality. I'm over here, everything else out there. We're isolated and alone. And from that root confusion comes greed and anger. Those are or not anger, pardon me, hatred, aversion. So in relation to the small self, we'll call it, or the isolated self, we want, you know, we experience things external and we want them, we crave them, we want to bring them in. That which is pleasurable, we want more of. It includes apparent objects and it includes experiences. You know, we have a good feeling, we want more of it. Yeah. So that greed is the sort of umbrella term for all of that clinging, the craving. And on the other side, aversion, all the stuff we don't want. We have an unpleasant feeling, don't want that, push it away. You know, somebody we don't like comes in the room, I don't want that. And it's kind of crazy. Because we're engaged in this pushing and pulling, or we're being pushed and pulled. Our sense of self is pushed and pulled. But we're doing it all ourselves, right? So the example of, so somebody comes in the room that you don't like, and the aversion comes up, the wall comes up, and you want less of that. Yeah. What is it? It's an impression that you have about that person. They said something once you didn't like. You don't like the way they carry themselves. You know, there's some point that you're fixated on in the past, you know, and you impute on them a enemy or a person that brings me unpleasant feelings, so I don't want it. You could just as easily find some good quality. You know, this is why when we practice gratitude, how it's powerful, is because it's transforming our mind from aversion to agreeableness, right? From it, and so that movement, it's not coming from anything external. It never is. It looks like it. That person is a pain. That person is unlikable. No, you just decided they were. Your mind exaggerated some small moment to create a character. Yeah. So everybody's playing a role. Here's the evil villain, right? Where does the evil villain come from? Your thought of the evil villain. There's no evil villain there. Somebody else sees the same person. It's their son or daughter. It's their mother, their aunt. It's somebody that is quite lovable. So the whole of our practice revolves around seeing what the mind is doing, how the mind operates. The mind collapses or constricts into a self, a character, an identification with the body and some thoughts, and then it wants and it averse it. It craves, it clings, and it wants to get rid of. And these two movements it's actually the same thing, right? The aversion is a craving to be rid of something, right? So the mastery comes from learning to see this movement of mind, learning to see that this is how the mind operates, and to untangle yourself from it. So this can be done, it's done in two main ways, right? And in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about it like the wings of a bird. Yeah, wisdom and compassion. The path of wisdom is that direct seeing, that cutting through the illusion of the isolated self. Seeing that everything, in fact, is interdependent, interbeing, arising together, and never fixed. It's constantly changing, constantly shifting. So that sense that we're a thing in a universe of other things, with wisdom, it's loosened so that we see we're a system, we're a process unfolding in a larger process, like a stream, like a steady flow. So the path of wisdom, we sharpen to see through the root confusion. The path of compassion approaches it loosening it through love. Yeah, so transforming enemies into friends, you could say, as the short form, transforming the heart one object at a time, so that the mind becomes more and more undefended, more and more comfortable, and that sense of I'm over here and the rest of the world's over there is dissolved through love and compassion, and wisdom naturally arises. So the two paths are actually the same. Yeah, one is just quicker. The quicker you can drop the ego self, in that moment you are free. And it kind of happens like that too. It's not like we're developing something that will manifest in the future. It's anytime you have this insight, you're free. Anytime you cut the confusion, you cut that root delusion, you're liberated. Yeah. And in fact, you already are, right? This is our natural state is liberated. It's just when we fall into that constriction, we fall into that clinging. The clinging comes and we identify with the self, and the walls go up, and it's bumpy, right? So we soften the heart, open the heart, walls dissolve, everything's smooth, open. Yeah, no problems anywhere. If there's no you, there's no Kate. Kate has no problems. There's nothing wrong. It's just all unfolding, right? And it's easy to say that, and it's easy to see it, and it's easy to, scroll Facebook and see a meme and be like, yeah, right on. We're all one. Yeah. But the experience of that as an ongoing moment by moment reality is what we're after. Yeah. So something like That's the opportunity that's available in training the mind, right? So we can improve a little bit our peacefulness, or as Ajahn Chah says, we can let go a little and we have a little freedom, little peace. We let go a lot, we can have a lot of freedom, a lot of peace. We let go completely of this confused, isolated self, completely free, no problems. So determination is rooted in this initial insight, this initial wisdom and wish. Oh yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that I'm playing a character because last year I was playing a different one. Because 10 years ago I was playing a different one. I was single and led a completely different life, and now I have all these other roles that I play. Well, it's all changing, constantly shifting. So the determination to let go and become more in touch with the natural fluidity. Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say there a minute or two ago around the waking up. And this, I'm going to circle back to it because it seems really important to me. So, because just to distinguish what we're doing from like simple self-improvement, like getting, not to put down self-improvement, but it's not a project in improving Heather, for example, or Jeremy, right? It's a project in liberation. So Heather and Jeremy never get to be enlightened, right? There's no isolated self that suddenly is enlightened. It's the opposite. Yeah, the enlightenment is the complete relaxation around the constriction of the small self. And so that ties into the point where I was saying, any moment that you are free, you are free. Any moment that you are without, this is why it feels so good to lose ourselves in a movie or lose ourselves in a skydive or a roller coaster ride. The self disappears because we're so involved in what's happening, or the flow state if you're an artist, or that feels good because where's the I? It's not apparent. That small self I is gone. Yeah. So wonderful if you can get into the flow state, or you can do these activities where the self dissolves. But it's temporary unless you also develop the wisdom and connect. This is why we practice mindfulness, is connect with remembering to let go, remembering. And so then we merge the understanding of this emptiness, this flow, with our ordinary everyday life. And everything gets a little easier. Oh. So on the path of compassion, we're turning enemies into friends. There's particular, that's the last book we did, the Lojong teachings. There's actual specific practices, but any sort of compassion or loving kindness is going to start to do that. And we start with the 100 Days of Care, and what we start with metta practice or loving kindness practice, we start with the self, right? All of the ways that we're at war with ourselves, so we have this boundary between ourselves, our isolated self, and the rest of phenomena. But then also inside of ourselves, we have all kinds of war fronts, right? Like places where we're uncomfortable. And that we need to bring love into. It's kind of washing the self, loosening. We do it with ourselves, and then we also start to do it with others. So it's kind of done in combination, and we're not going to just love ourselves up and then shift to other people's. It starts to come as a result of looking at what our mind is like and being more forgiving, compassionate, loving with ourselves. Then we start to do the same with others. it just becomes easy to see, oh, well, that's not a faulty person. That's a person suffering from craving or clinging. May they be free. Yeah, and it simultaneously, we want to liberate ourselves and we want to liberate all the other characters who are confused and struggling. Yeah. And so then inward and outward becomes smooth. We no longer see faults, we see objects of compassion. If someone cuts us off in the highway, instead of being, yeah, we feel like, oh man, they must be having a hard day. Right? It shifts completely. And you can see the liberation in that, right? We are not, well, Michael likes to say it, my husband likes to say it, we suffer our ignorance, we suffer our anger, right? We are, when you get angry and frustrated, when you constrict, when you contract, who does it hurt? You. Right? The driver has no idea that you're mad at them. Or they might have an idea. Or you might have a story that they have an idea and that they're doing it to get a rise out of you or whatever the elaboration is. But any of that elaboration, any of the conceptual thoughts that come along with our moods and feelings, they are feeding it. So we drop the story and come back to the feeling. Oh, there's anger. Oh, I'm really anxious. You know, drop the story and just come in and feel the feeling. That's a little liberation, a little letting go. To keep an eye on time. So determination, Adhitthana Parami, this first far-reaching attitude, it's going to revolve around, you could either just be specific to 100 Days of Care, determined to become unwaveringly loving towards yourself and others. Yeah, or it could be a determination to realize this emptiness of the self, to realize the lack of isolation. And we just do it little by little, right? So in this moment, you know, we've just meditated, you're listening to me talk, and you might feel like, oh yeah, that sounds really good. And so you kind of planting a seed of determination, right? But then we have to keep planting those seeds. Right? So later on, you know, you go home and the mind shifts and you forget this and you get caught up and swept away. If you come back, as you come back, you remember, well, you have to write your 100 days closing reflection. You remember, plant another seed, determination. Oh. And we keep doing that, and that begins to create the path. Right? So we hear about the path, the spiritual path. This is a mental construction. It comes from the inside out. There's no path somewhere else. You're creating your own path. To the extent that you are unconscious and just clinging and being pushed and pulled, that's your path, right? Like the wheels of a cart being pulled by a horse. The karma is just, it just unfolds, right? We start to wake up, we start to get intentional, we start to create actions leading in the direction we want to go. Where do we want to go? Liberating, opening, unconstricting, unbounded. And so the path is created each time the mind turns towards it. Yeah, if you've ever, is it an Irish saying that may the road come up to meet you? It's like it arises and you take a step. And it's just in that moment. Yeah. So as we practice determination, its characteristic, this is from the book now, is steadfastness. It functions to sustain clarity. So determination, every time we come back to clarify our direction, we're sustaining a clarity about what we're doing. It develops into tenacity. So yeah, the instructions in the chapter there are to, cultivate awareness, cultivate a mindfulness off the cushion. No? That is supported by on cushion practice, and even 5 minutes a day is going to make a difference. Even 1 minute a day is going to make a difference. And the whole function of the daily reflection, morning and evening, is to create that container, right? The container that of practice. Wake up in the morning, I'm going to pay attention today. Yeah, what are we paying attention to? So there's lots of different ways, and meaning there's lots of different things you can pay attention, or ways you can pay attention. And the section about what is my practice today, how will I be of service to my future self and others, around that. So I just gave an example of something that you could practice, and you could set it down in the morning and notice it through the day. And that is when you have a strong reaction to something, notice that you're having a strong reaction, drop the story, come into the felt sensation. Come in, what does the anger feel like? Where is it in my body? Can I relax my shoulders? Is it kind of burning? Is it clumped up? None of that matters. We're not trying to find the thingness of the anger. We're just doing something different than letting the mind fall in with the story and keep rehashing the moment. Right? So developing an awareness, there's other ways to do it. Tracy, who I think is online tonight, on day one, she mentioned, I'm going to set some timers on my phone. So you could do that. You could set timers, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a day. When it goes off, feel your feet on the ground or your seat in your chair. Take a mindful pause. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this practice in his monastery. Is it a monastery? Plum Village in France, where the monastics live and people practice there. The bells ring all day long. If you come on retreat, that's what we do. We ring the bell between each period. So each time the bell rings, in Plum Village at least, what they do, everybody that is practicing, that that is there training the mind, they pause. The bell rings, they pause and feel, and you could do it right now. Feel where your shoulders are, relax them. Feel where your belly is, feel where your feet are. And it drops you out of the conceptual mind, the storytelling, the elaboration. Another way to practice is noticing in the elaborations, this kind of shift from fault finding to finding good qualities. Recognizing that it's all story. So tell a nice story. Not nice like comfortable, like liberating, like free, like loving, full of grace, full of mercy. Right? None of these qualities are liberating because of how they feel in the heart. So this is the other aspect of the path. What's our compass on the path? Softness of our heart. Does that relaxed, open-hearted, compassionate movement it comes down again to this constriction versus an open palm. The path is the open palm. Onward leading, we're leading ourselves on by that openness. And it takes discernment over time to, first we have to become aware of it, right? We drop in, but below the story, feel the feeling. And then we're like, well, what's going to be onward leading? What is, and this is what is referred to by how can I be of service to myself and others in this moment? What's the best thing for everyone concerned in this moment? So you find yourself in a situation working with others, drop your own agenda. Use the agenda of the greater good of the whole. This would be being in service to others. And I will just actually read from Ajahn Suchito's quote here. You have to make the resolve to practice if you are to follow any path at all. But that resolve requires the wisdom to sense that a course of action is worth following through and to moderate and supervise one's resolve. So we favor future well-being over short-term gratification, and we begin to build a strength around our resolve. I think it makes sense for me to pause here to see how people are doing.